In this lecture, we are going to develop a shooting game in GameLab on code.org. So the first thing that we will be doing is we will import all the three sprites first, which we will be using for making the game. Now for that we need to come on the animation workspace, and here we can make use of this new animation tab for adding a new sprite. Now let's search for a rocket sprite. So this is looking good, this blue one, right? Let's select this one. So for that we just have to click on this object and automatically it is going to get added like this in this animation workspace of the GameLab. Okay, now let's come back on this coding panel and define the code for accessing the sprite of the rocket here on the playground. So for doing that, we need to come on this sprite section first of this toolbox, and we are going to define this variable first for storing the sprite, and let's make use of this set animation block also for setting the animation for this variable named sprite. Let's change the name of this variable to rocket. And let's copy this and put it over here in place of this sprite, converting it back into block based coding. Now let us select this animation of ship 16_1. Fine, and for drawing it on this playground we will require two more blocks. First is this function draw, and the second is this draw sprites function, which is going to draw for us this rocket sprite over here on this playground. Let's run this game and see what is the output we are going to get. So as you can see, the rocket is visible to us, right? But I would like to see its head pointing towards this direction, pointing upwards. So for doing that, what we can do, we guys can rotate this sprite. Now how to rotate this sprite? We can come on this animation workspace, and from here what we can do, we can make use of this counterclockwise rotation tool. When you will hit this counterclockwise rotation, so this is what you are going to see. We don't require this space which is getting reflected right on the top and in the bottom of this rocket. So in order to eliminate this area, what we can do, we can make use of this rectangular selection tool and select this sprite like this. After selecting the sprite, what we can do, we can make use of this crop the sprite option. So this is going to crop the sprite for us, and it will remove the unselected part. So now the only thing which is left in this space is the sprite. Okay, now let's come back on the coding window and let's run this game and see what is the output we are going to get. So now the rocket is getting reflected like this, which is perfectly fine. Now in order to reduce the size of the rocket, what we can do, we can make use of this sprite.scale block, which you can easily find in the sprite section of toolbox. Just pick it and drop it over here below this set animation block and replace the name of the variable first. So this sprite over here needs to get replaced with the name of the variable in which we have saved this rocket's animation, right? So I'm reducing the size of the rocket to 0.5 from 1. So this is how it is going to look like. Let's make it 0.35. I think now it is perfectly fine, right? So right now it is getting reflected at this point, the coordinates of which are 200 by 200. I want to see this rocket getting reflected somewhere over here. The coordinates of this point where my mouse is at present on this playground are 200 by 342. So what we can do, we can change the value of y to 342. Let's see what is going to happen. Where are we going to see the rocket when we will run this game? Okay, so now it is getting reflected over here, right? So it is perfectly fine now. Now the second thing that we require is the enemy which we would like to shoot. So for adding that enemy's sprite, we have to again come on this animation workspace, and here we need to hit this new animation tab. Let's select a relevant sprite from here. Okay, let's select this cow, right? So I'm done with adding this cow's sprite in this animation workspace. Let's come back on this coding window, and now we need to define the code for accessing that cow's sprite on this playground. So for doing that, we need to convert it back into text-based coding first. Let's copy this whole code from here, and I'm going to paste it right below these 3 lines. Let's replace the variable's name first. So I'm replacing it with cow. So now I'm going to save that cow's sprite in this variable named cow. Fine, and we need to set the animation equal to cow's sprite. Let's run this game and see what is the output we are going to get. This is what we will get as an output. Now if you want to see this cow getting reflected somewhere at the top over here, fine, so we need to change the value of both x and y, right? So the coordinates of this point are 185 by 40. Let's replace this 200 by 180, and here I am going to write down 45. Let's see where are we going to get that cow on this playground now. So it is getting reflected over here. Now we are not able to see this whole cow, right? In order to see the whole cow, what we can do, we need to bring it somewhat down. So we can bring it over here. The coordinates of this point are 176 by 81. So let's keep it 180, and here I'm going to change the value of y to 71. Let's see what is the output we are going to get now. So it is perfectly fine right now. Okay, now let's reduce the size of this cow as well as of this rocket to 0.3 so as to make it look more good. Okay, now it is perfectly fine. Okay, now the third sprite that we require is of a bullet. Let's come back on this animation workspace. For adding a bullet to this animation workspace, we can make use of this draw your own option. Let's make use of this rectangle tool. And let's draw a rectangle over here. Fine, and now I am going to make use of this pen tool, and I am going to draw a mountain kind of thing right on the top of this rectangle. So this is going to be the bullet for us. Let's make use of this rectangle selection tool and select this whole sprite. Now I am going to make use of this crop the sprite option. In order to crop this sprite I have made on this animation workspace. Let's change the name of this sprite. So I am changing it to bullet. Coming back on this coding window, let's convert it back into text-based coding, and again I'm going to copy all three lines and I am going to put it over here. So this time we will be using this bullet named variable for accessing the bullet on this playground. It's converted back into block based coding and set the animation for this bullet named variable to this bullet. Let's run this game and see what's gonna happen. So at present we are able to see the bullet. Let's change the coordinate and bring this bullet over here. So the coordinates of this point are 182 and 208. Let's change this to 182 and I'm changing this to 208. So the bullet is getting reflected over here right now, which is perfectly fine, right? Okay, now what else you can do if you want to fill this empty space inside this bullet, you can make use of this paint bucket tool and then you can select any color from this color window. I am selecting black for now. Let's click here. So this is how you can fill the empty space, right? So now I think it is perfectly fine. Let's come back on this coding panel and increase the size of this bullet to 0.6. Let's see what are we going to get as a result. So the bullet is visible to us, but it is very long, right? We need to reduce the height of the bullet. See, for reducing the height, again we have a very beautiful block in this Sprite section of toolbox. The name of this block is Sprite.height. You can make use of. So I'm putting it over here right below this bullet.scale, and here I'm going to change the name of this variable first to bullet. Let's define 90 over here. Let's see what we're going to get. Okay, so it is still very long. Change it to 50. Okay, now I think it is fine, right? We're done with bringing all the required 3 sprites on this playground. So the next thing is to define the code with the help of which we can control the movement of this rocket. Now how we will do that? So the best way of doing that is to make use of if control statement. Fine. So I'm going to bring it and drop it over here. On pressing the left direction key, I would like to see this rocket moving towards the left side of this playground. See, now the cursor is on the playground, and if I will start moving this cursor towards the left side, what is happening? The value of y is not changing. The only thing which is constantly changing is the value of x, right? The value of y is going to remain constant. Why? Because we are moving along the x-axis. So that is the reason the value of y is not going to get affected. Now, if you are moving this cursor towards the left side, the value of x is constantly decreasing. Now, taking this as base, I am going to define a code with the help of which when I will press the left direction key, this rocket is going to start moving towards the left direction. And as soon as I will release the key, it will stop moving. For that, we need to come on this world area of this toolbox. And here you can see this key went down block, right? So we can make use of this. You just have to drag it and drop it inside this if loop like this. Now let's change this to left. So when the user will press the left direction key, what should happen? The rocket should start moving towards the left side. For doing that, you need to come on this sprite section of toolbox, and here you can find this sprite.x block, right? So we are going to make use of this, and I'm going to put it inside this if loop. Let's convert it back into text-based coding, and because we would like to see this rocket moving towards the left side. That is the reason we need to replace this sprite with the name of the variable in which we have saved the rocket. So we have saved it in this rocket named variable. Now rocket.x, what should happen to the position of this rocket along x-axis? That's what we can define over here with the help of this rocket.x block. Copy this rocket.x and put it over here, and then we can decrease the value of rocket.x by 5. Every time the user will press this left direction key, the value of rocket.x is going to get decremented by 5, and this rocket will move towards the left direction like this. Okay, now as you can see, some ghost like images of this rocket sprite are visible to us on this playground. How can you eliminate these ghost like images? So for doing that, we can define a white background just before the point where we are drawing the sprites. So here we can come on this drawing parts of this toolbox and put this background block over here. Let's change. Okay, so by default it is white only. Let's run this game, and I'm going to press the left direction key now. So I'm able to see the rocket moving towards the left side, right? And those ghost-like images are also not appearing now. Fine. Now the issue is that if I am pressing this left direction key, it is moving only once. Now if I want to see it continuously moving towards the left side till the time my finger is on the key, for doing that I can replace this key went down with key down. Let's now run this game and see what is going to happen. So I'm going to press this left direction key now, and as you can see, I'm able to see it moving towards the left side. And as soon as I will release the key, it will stop. I don't have to again and again hit the left direction key like the way I was doing when I used this key went down block. Now I am going to define a similar code in order to make the rocket move towards the right side of this playground. So I am replacing this left with right first. If I'm moving this cursor towards the right side, now the value of x is constantly increasing. On the basis of this phenomenon, we need to replace the sign with plus. We need to replace this minus with plus over here. Now let's run this game and see what is the output we are going to get. So on pressing the left direction key, I am able to see it moving towards the left side, and on pressing the right direction key, I am able to move it towards the right side of this playground. The next thing is, initially I don't want to see this bullet getting reflected over here on this playground. For doing that, we can make use of this block, the name of which is sprite.visible, which you can easily find in the sprite section of the toolbox. Let's bring it and place it over here. So because we are using it for the bullets, that is the reason we need to replace the name of this sprite with the name of the variable in which we have saved the bullet sprite. So bullet.visible accepts only two values, either false or true. If you will pass false for this bullet.visible, what will happen? Let's check it out. So the bullet will go disappear. It will no more be visible to you, just because we have defined this false for this bullet.visible part. Let's reset this game. Now let's come inside this function draw. As soon as the spacebar key is pressed, I would like to see the bullet coming out from this rocket, and I would like to see it moving towards the north side, towards this cow. We need to come on this control section first of the toolbox. Let's make use of this if block, and now I'm going to define a condition if the user will press the spacebar key, right? So again we can make use of this key down block, and let's change it to block based coding. I am selecting space from this drop down. As soon as the spacebar key is pressed, I would like to see the bullet getting reflected on this playground. This is the first thing which I want. So for doing that, what we can do, we can come on this sprite section, and again we are going to make use of this sprite.visible block. I'm putting it inside this if loop, and let's replace this with bullet, and the value this time I'm going to pass for this bullet.visible is true. Let's run this game. Okay, so at present only two sprites are visible to us. Let's hit this spacebar key and see what is going to happen. So we are able to see this bullet over here on this playground, right? But it is not moving. I want to see it moving towards north. So because I want to see it moving towards this cow, or you can say upwards, I want to see it moving. In order to do that, the best way is to make use of this sprite.velocity_y. With the help of this block, we can impart some velocity to a particular sprite along the y-axis. Okay, which is going to help that sprite in moving automatically. Let me show it to you practically what is going to happen when I will define this sprite.velocity_y component for the bullet sprite. So I'm going to replace this sprite with this variable first, bullet. If you will bring your cursor on the playground, and if you'll start moving your cursor upwards, the value of y is constantly decreasing, which means that we have to assign a negative value to the velocity y component in order to move a sprite in this direction, upwards. So that's what I am going to do now. I'm going to assign a negative value to this bullet.velocity_y component. So for now I am assigning it -4. Let's run this game. So at present the bullet is not visible to us. Let's hit the spacebar key and see what is going to happen. So I'm able to see that bullet moving upwards now. Okay, let's reset the game. Now I want to see the bullet coming out from this rocket. How can you achieve this thing? You can make the coordinates of the bullet equal to the coordinates of the rocket. So whenever the user will hit this spacebar key, bullet.x will be equal to rocket.x. Similarly, bullet.y is equal to bullet.x will become equal to rocket.x, and bullet.y will become equal to rocket.y. Right. Now when you will run this game and hit the spacebar key, you will get to see the bullet coming out from the rocket. Every time the user will hit the spacebar key, he will be able to see the bullet coming out from the rocket like this. Fine. Now if you want to see this bullet coming out from the tip, or you can say from the head of this rocket, so for doing that we need to shift this bullet from this point to this point. Now what is happening to the value of y which is getting reflected over here when I am moving this cursor from this point towards this point? So the value of y is decreasing, right? What we can do, instead of making this bullet.y equal to rocket.y, we can make it equal to rocket.y -20. Now let's reset this game and see what is going to happen. So this time it is coming out from this point. Let's reduce it further. Now this time it is coming exactly out of the head of this rocket. Even if you will move this rocket, you will be able to see the bullet coming out of the rocket. Every time you are hitting the spacebar key, the bullet is coming out of the rocket from the head of the rocket. Now the next thing is, as soon as this bullet hits this cow, I would like to see this cow changing its position. So how can we achieve this thing? For doing that, again we need to come on this control section of toolbox, and from here we can make use of this if loop. Let's put it over here. Now as soon as the bullet will hit the cow, so how can you check that condition? For checking that condition, there is a very beautiful block you can easily find in the Sprite section of the toolbox, the name of which is touching. So you can bring it and put it inside this if loop like this. So every time this bullet will touch the target, what is the target? The target is cow. So every time the bullet will touch the cow, we would like to see the cow changing its position. So for doing that, what we can do, we can assign a random position to the cow. So cow.x is equal to, let's come on this math section and make use of this random number property. So random number is going to get assigned to the cow somewhere in between, let's say, see, this is for the x-axis, right? So it is starting from here and it is ending at this point. So the value of x is 400, maximum value of x is 400. So we would like to see the cow somewhere in between 30 to 340. Similarly, we can define the same thing for cow.y part also. Let's run this game and see what is going to happen. Okay, so it is changing its position. Every time this bullet is hitting this cow, the cow is changing its position. Now the issue is, I don't want to see this cow touching this rocket. How can we prevent this from happening? We can bound this cow to move in this area only, in the first half of this playground. We can replace this 340 by 200. Let's reset this game and see whether we are going to get the right output or not. Okay, so it is working perfectly fine now. Okay, so that's how you can make a very beautiful shooting game in the GameLab on code.org. Hope you guys enjoyed this lecture. Thank you very much. God bless you and namaste.